In this video, we're going to be showing you how to assemble and install cat liners and pistons. We're going to be showing you what lubricants to use, things to look for, talking about having to repair the liner seal area, how to install bearings, all sorts of stuff. It's going to include, like I said, the liner and the piston installation as well, not the complete engine, so pretty much everything you need for the rotating assembly. So we're going to be installing seals on here. These liners are upside down because obviously when it sits, that's going to be, this is the top of the liner, it's the bottom. So you're going to have 4 seals on a cat liner on a 3400 series. The top one is called a filler band. It's not necessarily an O-ring because it's not an O-shaped, it's a flat seal. That has to go on very last, and you also have to dip it in oil before putting it on. These 3 go in order. Purple is going to be coolant. The dark blue or black one is going to be oil. And then the orange one is just going to say middle somewhere. Like that. So we're going to put them on in that order. So it's going to be purple on the bottom, middle, and then black one on top because this is upside down. So let's do that. So they are fully assembled. And as you can see, we've got coolant, middle oil. And I always line them up like that. You don't have to, obviously, but as long as they're in that order, that's how the liner sits. So remember, the filler band doesn't go on until immediately before installation. So these are our liner bores. I'm going to clean this sealing surface here, which I already did. And if you noticed before, I said that I had built none of these. So what I'm talking about is right there. You can kind of see it. This area right here. And I've already polished it with sandpaper by hand. You can kind of tell where there was pitting, deep pitting, and it's been filled in. So the area, the seals don't sit on this tapered area here, right? They sit down here on this flat section. But the tapered area matters because that's where the seals compress to be slid in. So that's why you have to clean that area and then put any sort of sealant there and clean it up, obviously. But as long as there's no sharp edges, which you can't feel any, you should be good. Those liner seals are pretty tough, but you don't want to cut them or nick them when you're going in. So that's going to be our next job, is putting these liners in. Okay, so I like to get everything ready right before installation. So you can see I've got our liner install tool, this and this, and we're going to be applying the liner seal lubricant. So you're going to apply it to that liner seal area, particularly the tapered area, that same spot I was just talking about, because you want to lubricate those O-rings. You don't want to use oil, that can swell especially the coolant seal there. Okay, so that's lubricated. I'm going to lubricate the O-rings on the liner. Okay, so those both been lubricated. As you can see, it's a tire mounting compound or rubber lubricant, technically. And you're going to gently set it in there, like so. Now before you install it though, you have to do our filler band. The filler band has to be set in oil. So I've got oil here. Boop. You just need to kind of dip it in there so that it's fully in contact with oil. Scrape off the excess. That's a nice even coat. There we go. Always put it part number facing the correct way, although it doesn't really matter. And that goes on like that. Double check that our filler band is in the correct orientation, which it is. Alright, this liner's ready to go in. So this is a Monaco liner installer. Use the bar type, also the cat. I'm not sure who makes it for cat. Ferrum makes one. Kind of like that one a little more. It's faster. But They don't have to go till they bottom the stove. Whoop. And yeah, I did get a haircut. Okay, here we go. I like the look of the seals as they go in also. That's it. Liner's installed. Ready for the next one. Alright folks, so we got all of our liners in now. Obviously, pistons are not installed yet, but we're going to do liner protrusion next. And one thing I want to point out, he said he had a really bad oil leak on this engine around the block before. This has some of the worst wear into the block I've seen. So right here, do you see these ridges? Super deep. It's also into the spacer plate. Most likely due to the spacer plate shim. But look at that, it's pretty deep. I mean, the only really way to get rid of that would be to mill this deck, which obviously that would really increase the labor and repair cost on this. So what we're going to do is when we put the head gasket on, we're actually going to use the aviation gasket sealant. Hopefully it takes care of that leak or slows it down significantly. That will help seal the other leaks where usually they leak around these oil drain back holes. But let's do liner protrusion and then we'll put pistons in. Now, if you're going to be doing liners, you're going to want to do what they call liner protrusion. I do have other videos on how to do this, but basically what you have to do is you have to put a spacer plate gasket, the spacer plate itself, and then these special bolts and washers down to hold the liners and the spacer plate in place. Especially if your old head gasket looked like this. This was off a different engine, but yeah, any signs of damage to the fire ring and the head gasket itself, you're definitely going to want to check this, because generally you're going to find that you have a sunk liner. And earlier in the video I talked about this having counterbores cut, but that is a correction to a sunk liner. So once you get them in basically set up there, you're going to measure the height, and the liner needs to stick up, at least on the Cat 3400 series, between 1 and 6 thousandths above the spacer plate. Now this one in particular I had to pay special attention to because I had cut counterbores on 5 and 6. Now if Cat's going to be doing the work, generally they're going to either have you do all of them or none of them, and in general they're going to want you to do all of them. Since he had sunk liners on 5 and 6 though, we needed to cut them there. If it's your engine, that's kind of your call on what you want to cut them to. Now, if let's say all of them were low at 1 or 2 thousandths protrusion, you can actually get a 3 thousandths thinner liner spacer plate, and that will actually increase the numbers on your readings by 3 thousandths. So just an idea there, but let's get back to actually installing parts. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about pistons and installation for them. So if you noticed, maybe you didn't notice, these cylinder packs come fully assembled, so you could have put the liners in with the pistons. It is harder in general due to their weight, and in general I like doing liner protrusion but just the liners without the pistons installed. It would suck to have to pull the whole assemblies out. So these are doweled, which means they have dowel holes. Those need to face forward. The bearing tab, which is this little notch, needs to face to the right side of the engine, which is the exhaust side of the engine. Obviously no bearing in there yet. So the rings come installed already. You have an oil control ring, a second and a first ring, or top, middle, and oil control ring. Bolts are already on the Cat ones. We're gonna have, this is some just clean engine oil. One thing to do, first thing you want to do is engrave them. So if you can see that, I've engraved number 4 right there. I've also engraved that on the bearing cap on the same side, on the tab side. Number 4, see? Okay. So we are going to need a specialty tool called a piston ring compressor. Before we do that, we need to install our bearings here. This has standard size bearings. That's something you always want to check. You check the part numbers, see if they're the same, or it might say S or STD or standard on them. New bearing. You can see I don't know if you can see clearly. But at the very top it has an S. That's standard bearing. Rod bearings, this one in particular, there's no upper and lower. They're the same. Main bearings, usually there's an upper and a lower. Some rod bearings have an upper and a lower. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it'll usually say lower or upper here. The tabs are usually in different spots. These are identical, so it doesn't matter. We're going to set it up, and we're going to install the bearing. Okay, that's installed. The dowels face forward on the engine. Some things to understand here. So our piston rings, you don't necessarily see these gaps or not. If you can see, top ring gaps here, middle ring gaps here. This is exactly how I pulled it out of the box. So this is from Cat. Generally, you don't want these gaps to be lined up when assembled. It's going to change as the engine runs. There's nothing you can do about it. But I like to put the top one and the bottom, or the top and middle, about 180 out, and then the oil control ring kind of in the middle of both of those. So I've got gap, gap, and gap. About the best you can do. I like to take a look at the snap rings while we're here. They're set in. Not much else to go wrong here. We're going to put a good amount of oil. I like to put a little on the sides here. Oh, not there. Put a little on the sides because that's going to slide down the liner. I've already lubricated the liner, and you're going to put some here where the bearing, or not the bearing, the skirt. This is called the skirt. This is a two-piece piston, so it's a steel head and a aluminum skirt. Just a good amount. Okay. Now we're going to use our piston ring compressor. Now the piston's upside down, so this tool needs to be upside down, which is this way. There's different styles. It's the only type I like. The universal style one, I've had really bad luck with that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this piston ring, or the piston, in the ring compressor here. Now the only thing you need to be careful is don't pinch. You don't want the ring gaps basically where the openings are, they could pinch. Okay, so this puppy's ready for installation, except for one thing. The bearings. We need to lubricate the bearings also. You do not want to lubricate the backs of bearings unless manufacturer says so. Cat and most manufacturers that I know of say do not lubricate the backs of the bearings. By the backs, I mean the part that's in contact with the rod or the rod cap. Reason for that is it's a actual compression style fit, so nothing holds this bearing in other than it's bigger than the bore that it's in. So if you have something between the rod and the bearing, it's more likely that it'll spin. People I've heard have said, oh, what about heat transfer, stuff like that. Basically metal is going to conduct very easily into metal. You don't have to worry about heat transfer in that regard. So this one's ready to go. Let's put it in. Okay, so we have our bearing tab facing the right side, which is the side the camera's on. This is number 4, and the dowels are facing forward. So we're gonna, as gently as possible, slide this puppy in there. Now in general, you should be able to set it in there, like so. There we go. You should be able to push it in with hand. You shouldn't have to hit it. It's moving. There we go. They're in. So now we have to put the rod caps on and torque them. Also, I have this, it's actually a moving cart, so it's on wheels. I call it my bearing skateboard, but we're doing rods and mains. You set them here. You could probably get a cleaner rag, but you can set them here and roll them under, just kind of like your creeper. So you're not like putting those directly on the ground. It makes it really nice. You can put your tools there too, they won't sit on the ground. let's put the caps on. Might be difficult to see what we're going to do here, but install some rod caps. Alrighty. So our bearings are in place. Oops. Always check the number. Got a 3 and a 3. We've lubricated the bearings. We're using engine oil. Depends on the engine. Some, even though these rods fit a couple different engines, one will say engine oil, one will say molybdenum paste on there for what the appropriate bolt lubricant is. So engine oil is easier. Do what it says though. So what we're going to do is just slide the cap all the way up and then run these down by hand. Now I don't ever really let the cap go until it's seated because I don't want the bearing to separate out from the cap. If it does, then you press it back on. You don't necessarily know that it's going to sit where the tab goes, and it could create problems. I'm getting oil dripped on me, which is literally just the best thing ever. Okay, so that one's on there. Number 4, same thing. I'm going to make sure that it is marked with 4, marked with 4. Bearing tab to the right side of the engine. Dowels face forward. Same thing with the bolt lubricants. You also lubricate the threads of the bolts and under the head of the bolt. Assembled. Torque time. So 65 foot-pounds. And then 90-degree torque turn. So, torque wrench. These do not have any particular order as in which side to start on first, so pick a side until it clicks. Click. Click. I'll double check those two. Click. Now the torque turn itself can be tricky. We're going to use an impact to do it. Click. Just double check in. These are pretty darn important fasteners, so the oil dripping out's a good sign actually, because when the bearings compress, it'll squish the oil evenly across them, and any excess will kind of leak out, so it's fairly normal. So we're going to mark these in line with the body of the rod cap, so the lines go this way. We're going to torque turn them with our impact, which will be pretty easy actually. And these are 90 degrees, which is an exact right angle. So I'm going to mark. Put a mark on here. Can't tell what I'm doing. The socket's marked in 4 positions, 90 degrees apart from each other, and as you hit it, it is rotating it to the next mark. That's it. So we got 1/3 or 2 out of the 6 connecting rods in. So a couple things to check after I do this. There should be no up or down movement on the rod. It should move back just a little bit. don't know if you can even tell. Just, I don't know, maybe 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths. Just a little bit of movement and no up or down movement. Totally normal. We're done with that part. Let's put the rest in. Hope you guys enjoy this video. If you want your own Adept Tape sticker, link will be in the description. Made here in the United States. And how about we do a little destruction of the week? Got some gasoline engine destruction here. This is out of a GM LS engine, so pretty much all aluminum. This is actually a piston, I believe. Underside? That's the sidewall of the cylinder there. Look at that. You can actually see the castings, all aluminum. Kind of like my van engine. However, my van engine is currently in better condition than this. Cylinder head there. Ooh, at least they're cheaper to repair than gasoline engines, or diesel engines, sorry. Next one we have is from Cole. The previous ones were from Gavin, by the way. Cole sent a bunch of pictures, and this is some random transmission and differential problems. Look at the drain plugs there, the magnets. That one makes me laugh. All sorts of broken stuff in this picture, pretty much everywhere you look. I got a PTO coming up here. This is a pinion, obviously. That one pretty broken. He had tons of pictures he'd sent me. He said this PTO here was off of one of the trucks that runs on the train tracks, and it apparently fell off of the train tracks and landed on the PTO. And I guess that's what it looks like when a truck lands on a PTO. The next one we have here is a Cummins engine. So this is a picture of the injector from the previous clip where it was spraying that fuel and oil all over the place. And these pictures are from Ben, by the way, when I mentioned his name. This is the injector rocker arm there. It looks a lot like a Cat one here. However, this was out of a Cummins. Great pictures, great video. Thanks for everyone who sends those. We're doing another video on setting the head and using the gantry crane to finish up that engine. Thanks for watching.